Welcome back to Books on the Mic. We're on Chapter 8 and ready to unlock some serious knowledge about achieving big results. Today we are diving into Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect. If you are ready to discover how those small everyday choices can lead to massive success, hit that subscribe button and let's get started.
It's interesting how we often think we need these huge dramatic actions to make real progress. But Hardy really flips that idea on its head. He argues that it's those small, consistent actions repeated over time that create the most significant impact.
So it's more like a marathon than a sprint.
Exactly. Hardy uses this brilliant analogy of a plane taking off. If the pilot adjusts the nose of the plane just a few degrees off course, it might not seem like a big deal at first. But over the course of a long flight, that tiny adjustment can lead the plane hundreds of miles away from its intended destination.
Wow, that really puts it into perspective. It's almost like we're on autopilot making these small choices without realizing the long-term consequences.
That's exactly the point Hardy is making. He wants us to become more aware of those choices, those seemingly insignificant actions we take every day, and understand how they're shaping our lives.
So how do we break free from that autopilot and start making more intentional choices?
One of the first steps is simply acknowledging the power of those choices. Hardy uses a great example in the book about three friends, Brad, Norman, and Scott. Brad starts making small, negative changes in his life, like indulging in richer foods and being less active. Norman stays the same, and Scott makes small, positive changes, like cutting 125 calories a day and walking a bit more.
So initially, probably not much difference between the three, right?
Right. For almost 2 years, you can barely see any changes. But then, after about 25 months, the impact of those small, consistent choices becomes startlingly clear. Scott ends up losing 33 pounds and is enjoying increased energy and focus, while Brad is facing the consequences of his unhealthy choices.
That's a pretty powerful illustration of how these seemingly insignificant choices can compound over time. But it makes me wonder, how do we know which choices to focus on? There are so many decisions we make every day. It can feel overwhelming.
That's where the idea of tracking comes in. Hardy emphasizes the importance of tracking our choices and actions, not just to measure progress, but to increase awareness and identify those patterns that might be holding us back.
So it's like a financial tracker, but for every area of life.
Exactly. Hardy tells a story about his assistant Kathleen, who completely transformed her financial situation simply by tracking her spending. She started by saving just 1% of her income, which honestly doesn't sound like a lot. But by tracking her expenses and identifying areas where she could cut back, she gradually increased her savings rate. You won't believe what happened next.
Tell me.
Well, within a few years, Kathleen ended up earning over $100,000 a year on a $40,000 base salary. And eventually, she became a millionaire, all because she started tracking her spending and making those small, consistent adjustments.
That's incredible. I'm definitely feeling inspired to start tracking my own spending now. But what about other areas of life? How can we apply this tracking principle to things like our health relationships or personal growth?
That's a great question, and it's something Hardy addresses directly. He says that one of the most powerful ways to track our progress in any area is to simply keep a journal. Every day, take a few minutes to reflect on your choices and actions, and write down what you did well, where you could improve, and what you're grateful for.
So it's not just about recording our actions, it's about reflecting on them and identifying those patterns that might be helping or hindering our progress.
Exactly. The simple act of writing things down can be incredibly illuminating. It helps us see those choices we might not even realize we're making, those habits and routines that are running on autopilot in the background.
That's so true. I've noticed that when I actually write things down, I become much more aware of my thought patterns and behaviors. It's like shining a light on those blind spots we all have.
And that awareness is crucial for making those small, consistent adjustments that can lead to massive results over time. Hardy calls it the ripple effect, where one small change creates a cascade of positive consequences.
It's almost like a domino effect.
Yeah.
One positive choice leads to another, and before you know it, you've created a whole new reality for yourself. But I have to admit, sometimes those small changes can feel, well, small. Like there's not really making much of a difference. How do we stay motivated and keep going when the results aren't immediately obvious?
That's where the concept of momentum comes in. Hardy uses a fantastic analogy of a merry-go-round. Remember those? Remember how hard it was to get that thing spinning at first? It took a lot of effort pushing and pulling and getting nowhere fast.
Oh, I totally remember. I used to spend hours at the playground trying to get those merry-go-rounds going.
Okay. And once it started spinning, it got easier and easier to keep it going right.
Yeah.
Building momentum is like that, those first few steps toward a new goal. Those initial attempts to break a bad habit or build a good one are always the hardest. But if we can just push through that initial resistance and keep taking consistent action, even when we don't feel like it, eventually momentum takes over.
It's that point where the merry-go-round starts spinning effortlessly, and all you have to do is hop on and enjoy the ride.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to celebrate those small wins along the way. Acknowledge your progress no matter how small, and use it as fuel to keep that momentum going.
So it's not just about the big milestones, it's about recognizing those small victories that keep us moving forward.
Absolutely. And speaking of moving forward, let's talk about another crucial element of the compound effect, the role of our environment. Hardy argues that our surroundings have a huge impact on our choices, behaviors, and ultimately our results.
So it's not just about willpower and self-discipline. Our environment actually plays a role in our success.
Absolutely. Hardy uses a really powerful phrase, what you tolerate, you get. Think about it. If we tolerate disrespect, we'll be disrespected. If we tolerate people being late, people will be late for us. If we tolerate being underpaid or overworked, those situations will persist.
That's a powerful reminder that we have a lot more control over our environment than we might realize.
Exactly. And it's not just about setting boundaries with other people. It's also about creating an environment that supports our goals and aspirations. Hardy talks about the importance of creating rhythms and routines that help us stay consistent with our goals. And he emphasizes the power of having a supportive space that nurtures our growth.
So it's kind of like setting the stage for success, creating a space where those small positive actions can flourish.
I love that. It's like creating a fertile garden where our goals can thrive. We need to make sure the soil is rich, the sunlight is plentiful, and we're watering our seeds consistently.
That's a great analogy. And it makes me wonder, what about those weeds that might be choking the life out of our garden? How do we deal with those negative influences that can sabotage our efforts?
Hardy addresses that directly with the concept of dissociations, which means intentionally distancing ourselves from people who drain our energy, bring us down,
Wow.
or encourage us to make choices that don't align with our goals.
So it's about being selective about who we allow into our garden and making sure they're not contaminating the soil.
Exactly. Now, I know this can be difficult, especially if it involves relationships with family or close friends. But Artie argues that it's essential to protect our time, energy, and emotional well-being if we want to achieve our goals.
It's about prioritizing our own growth and recognizing that sometimes that might mean creating some distance from people who aren't supporting that journey.
Precisely. And on the flip side, he talks about the importance of expanded associations. It's about actively seeking out and connecting with people who inspire us, challenge us, and support our growth.
So it's not just about removing the negative influences. It's about actively cultivating positive relationships that nourish our goal.
Exactly. It's like planting new seeds in our garden, seeds that represent the qualities and experiences we want to cultivate in our lives. And when we surround ourselves with people who embody those qualities, we create a powerful ecosystem for growth and success.
This is all making so much sense, but let's take a quick break here and come back for part 2 of this deep dive to explore even more practical strategies for harnessing the power of the compound effect. Welcome back to our deep dive into the compound effect. Before the break, we were talking about the importance of our environment and how it can either support or sabotage our progress. But let's get even more practical. Hardy lays out these 3 core principles he calls the big 3 that really drive those massive results we've been talking about. What are they?
Well, first, he emphasizes the power of choices. We've already touched on this. But it's worth reiterating that those small everyday decisions we make are the foundation of everything. Artie argues that each choice we make sets off a chain reaction that ripples through our lives, often in ways we don't even realize.
So those seemingly insignificant choices actually have a much bigger impact than we might think.
Exactly. It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books we read as kids. Each choice we make leads us down a different path and shapes the outcome of our story. Hardy stresses that we need to become more conscious of those choices, big and small, and take responsibility for the results they create.
So it's not just about making the right choices. It's about recognizing that we're always making choices, even when we're not actively thinking about it.
That's a great way to put it. It's about shining a light on those autopilot habits and routines and asking ourselves, are these choices really serving me? Are they aligned with my goals and values? If not, it might be time to make some adjustments.
It's like taking back control of the steering wheel, instead of letting life just happen to us. But even when we're making conscious choices, how do we ensure we're actually following through and taking consistent action.
That brings us to the second principle of the big three, consistency. Hardy is adamant that consistency trumps intensity every time. It's not about being perfect or making drastic changes overnight. It's about showing up day after day, even when we don't feel like it, and consistently taking those small steps that move us closer to our goals.
He compares it to the process of building a muscle, right? You don't get ripped by lifting weights once. It's
Yeah.
about those consistent workouts, pushing yourself a little bit further each time, and trusting that those small efforts will eventually lead to big results.
Exactly. And just like building a muscle takes time and dedication, so does building success in any area of life. We need to cultivate that patience and trust in the process, even when we don't see those immediate results. It's about playing the long game,
Ah,
knowing that those small, consistent actions are compounding over time and creating something extraordinary.
but let's be honest, staying consistent can be tough. There are always going to be days when we lack motivation or feel like giving up. How do we overcome those hurdles and keep that momentum going?
That's where the third principle comes in. Momentum. Hardy uses that brilliant analogy of the merry-go-round again. Remember how much effort it took to get that thing spinning at first? You had to push and pull and really exert yourself to get it moving. But once it got going, it became easier and easier to maintain that speed.
It's like that snowball effect. Once we
Mm.
get the ball rolling, it starts to pick up speed and power as it goes.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to celebrate those small wins along the way. Each step forward, no matter how small, contributes to that momentum and fuels our motivation to keep going.
It's like giving ourselves those little pats on the back, acknowledging that we're making progress, and using that positive reinforcement to keep moving forward. But even with momentum on our side, it's easy to get sidetracked. How do we stay focused on our goals
Yeah.
and avoid those distractions that can pull us off course?
That's where Hardy introduces the concept of goals first. He argues that we need to be crystal clear about what we want to achieve and then prioritize those goals in every aspect of our lives. He even suggests creating a goals list and reviewing it regularly to ensure that our actions are aligned with our aspirations.
So it's about having that North Star to guide us, that constant reminder of what we're working towards, so we can make those daily decisions that support our ultimate vision.
Absolutely. And here's another powerful tool Hardy recommends, the competition cure. He suggests finding someone who shares similar goals and using that healthy competition to push each other further. It's like having a training partner who motivates you to show up and do the work, even when you don't feel like it.
It's that feeling of accountability,
Yeah.
knowing that someone else is watching your progress and cheering you on. It's like having a built-in support system to keep you on track.
Exactly. And it's not just about competition, it's also about collaboration and support. Hardy encourages us to seek out mentors, coaches, or even just friends who can offer guidance, encouragement, and accountability along the way. He argues that surrounding ourselves with the right people can significantly accelerate our progress and help us stay committed to our goals.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders in your corner, reminding you of your strengths, celebrating your victories, and helping you pick yourself up when you stumble.
And speaking of stumbling, let's talk about another crucial element that Hardy emphasizes, the importance of learning from our mistakes. He argues that failure is not the opposite of success, it's a stepping stone to success. It's those lessons we learn from our missteps that ultimately shape our growth and make us stronger, wiser, and more resilient.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about embracing those setbacks as opportunities to learn, adjust course, and keep moving forward.
Exactly. Hardy even suggests creating a failure list, where we write down our mistakes, analyze what went wrong, and extract those valuable lessons that can help us avoid making those same mistakes in the future.
It's like turning those failures into valuable data points that can inform our future decisions and help us make better choices.
That's a great way to put it. It's about shifting our perspective from seeing mistakes as something to be ashamed of to recognizing them as essential ingredients in the recipe for success.
This has been so insightful. I'm already starting to rethink my approach to achieving my goals. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear more about the practical strategies Hardy suggests for implementing the compound effect in our daily lives. What are some actionable steps we can start taking today?
Well, one of the most fundamental principles he emphasizes is starting small. He actually advocates for identifying those tiny 1% changes we can make in any area of our lives. It's not about those drastic overnight transformations, it's about those consistent incremental adjustments that build upon each other over time.
It's like choosing one plant in our garden to really focus on nurturing, giving it the attention it needs to thrive. and then gradually expanding our efforts to other areas once we've seen some success.
That's a fantastic way to put it. It's about creating a sustainable approach to growth that we can actually stick with, rather than overwhelming ourselves with too many changes at once. And speaking of sustainable growth, Hardy is a big advocate for routines. He argues that they're absolutely essential for regulating our behavior and ensuring that we're consistently taking action toward our goals.
He even shares his own personal routines in the book, like his morning routine where he focuses on feeding his mind with positive and inspiring content, and his evening cash-out ritual where he takes time to reflect on the day and plan for the next one. I've always struggled with routines, but hearing him talk about it makes me realize they're less about being rigid and more about creating a framework that supports our goals.
Exactly. They provide a structure that helps us stay consistent with those small positive actions that contribute to the compound effect. It's all about designing a rhythm for our day that sets us up for success and allows us to show up as our best selves day after day.
I'm starting to see how all these principles work together. It's not just about making those small choices and being consistent. It's about creating an environment and a structure that supports those efforts. But let's be real, life happens. How do we stay on track when those inevitable challenges and distractions pop up?
That's where the power of accountability comes in. Hardy really emphasizes the importance of having someone to share our goals with, someone who can provide support, encouragement, and hold us accountable for our commitments. He talks about having a weekly call with his own mentor, where they discuss their wins, losses, and progress toward their goals.
It's like having a teammate on that journey toward success, someone who's cheering us on
Yeah,
and helping us stay on track.
precisely. And it doesn't have to be a formal mentor-mentee relationship. It could be a friend, family member, or even a colleague who shares similar goals. What matters is finding someone who believes in you, supports you, and is willing to hold you accountable for your actions.
And speaking of accountability, one strategy Hardy suggests is tracking our progress. He emphasizes how the simple act of recording our actions and results makes us more aware of our choices and helps us stay focused on those goals. He even recommends something as simple as carrying a small notebook to jot down everything we do related to our goals, whether it's what we eat, how we spend our money, or the time we dedicate to personal growth.
It's like creating a map of our journey towards success, a way to visualize where we've been, where we're going, and what adjustments we need to make along the way. And it's not just about tracking the wins, it's about acknowledging our missteps and learning from those mistakes as well.
So it's about honesty and self-awareness, recognizing that setbacks are part of the journey, and using them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective from seeing those mistakes as failures to seeing them as valuable data points that can inform our future decisions and help us make better choices.
It strikes me that the compound effect isn't just a set of strategies. It's really a mindset shift. It's about recognizing that success is a process, not a destination, and that consistent small actions can lead to extraordinary results over time.
That's a great observation. It's about trusting in the power of those small, consistent choices and believing that we can achieve anything we set our minds to if we're willing to put in the effort and stay the course.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. It's clear that the compound effect isn't just a self-help book. It's a guide to living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
And the beauty of it is that it's all within our control. It's about making the choice to show up every day, to take those small actions, to create an environment that supports our goals, and to never stop learning and growing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the compound effect, I'd like to leave our listeners with a challenge. What's one small change you can make today that, if repeated consistently, could have a significant impact on your life a year from now?
Take a moment to think about that and then commit to taking action. Remember, the compound effect is always working, whether we're conscious of it or not. So choose to make it work for you.
And that concludes this episode of Books on the Mic. We hope you found this deep dive into the compound effect insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll continue exploring powerful ideas from the world of books.